You're watching Knicks Now by Chat Sports. I am your host, Marshall Green. Appreciate everybody for stopping by as we break down the latest news and rumors that surround this basketball team. Earlier this week, the New York Knicks signed Chuma Okeke in NBA free agency. It was an Exhibit 10 deal, which means the Knicks still have an open roster spot for a guaranteed contract. And they actually do still have the taxpayer mid-level exception, which could pay a player in the first year of that contract $5.2 million, which means that the Knicks are going to make that happen, and we're going to talk about 5 players they could do it for. The Knicks are 100% going to use the taxpayer mid-level exception because they are $7.6 million below the second apron, and there's no reason not to use it. But the main reason that they are going to use this, not because they need another player on this roster. They could obviously use a center, but none of those guys that they want are available in free agency. It is because they want to have $5.2 million to use in a trade if something becomes available at the trade deadline. How do I know that? Because of the way that they structured the Precious Achiuwa deal. Fred Katz was the one to report this back on July 30th when Achiuwa did put pen to paper to return to the Knicks. Katz of The Athletic says, quote, Precious Achiuwa has waived his bird veto, a league source says. Normally a player of Achiuwa's type who re-signs on a one-year contract receives the right to veto any deal. But since Achiuwa waived his, he can be traded without the ability to veto the deal. So why would the Knicks structure that? Because of this. The person you are going to sign for the taxpayer mid-level exception plus Precious Achiuwa equals $11.2 million in salary, meaning the Knicks can send out the player they're going to sign with Precious and bring somebody back for $11.19 million and hopefully add someone that is going to improve this roster. The Knicks want to be able to make a deal at the deadline if they need to. They like Precious. They want him to be the guy. But let's say an injury happens, or they have a need somewhere else, or they figure out that Precious can't get it done at the backup 5. They don't want to be in a spot like, well, we don't have anyone to trade. We can't do it. That's why they're going to go out and sign someone. So let's talk about 5 players that they can, not to help this team, but to maybe make them a more valuable trade partner for that $5.2 million. The first player I want to talk about on today's show is Isaac Okoro, the defensive guard formerly of the Cleveland Cavaliers. He is a free agent. I do expect him, though, to re-sign with the Cleveland Cavaliers. Okoro at 6'5", 23 years old, is one of the better defensive guards in the NBA. He just couldn't guard Jalen Brunson in the playoffs of 2023. He had a pretty solid year last year for Cleveland, averaging 9.4 points per game, and he actually has become a pretty solid shooter from downtown, upping his three-point percentage from 29% to 35% to 36.3% to 39.1%. He was actually in the top 100 of catch-and-shoot three-point percentage this past year. Only thing is I'm not so sure he's going to leave the Cleveland Cavaliers because Okoro's qualifying offer is for 1 year and $11.8 million. He could sign that deal today, but also the Cleveland Cavaliers could pull that deal from him. Maybe you could incentivize him for a 2-year, $12 million deal or something like that with the second year as a player option. But he's the best free agent left, so it'd be dumb not to talk about him. Let's talk about another guard that actually played in New York last year for the Brooklyn Nets, Lonnie Walker. I've always been a fan of Lonnie Walker's game coming out of Miami, one of those hyper-athletic guards. And how could we forget the 2023 playoffs when he had some big-time games for the Los Angeles Lakers? Young enough to still carry some trade value, because you don't just want to sign anyone to $5.2 million. You at least want to incentivize the other team to play for the guy. But for some reason, he just hasn't found a home in the NBA. I like the way he competes, and I think there's been some growth in his game. Kind of like Okoro, you've seen the outside shot become a little bit more consistent. At 31.4% in 2021, up to 36.5%, then up to 38.4% from downtown. He could score as well. He averaged 9.7 points per game last year, and in 3 out of the last 4 years, or the prior 3 years, he averaged north of 11.2 points per game. There's somebody out there that could use him. And I do think that if the Knicks were to sign him, he could be a valuable player in a trade down the line. Another guy that I think fits the bill of that is Talen Horton-Tucker, the guy that was once going to be the person the Knicks or the Lakers were going to trade to get a big-time player. Never lived up to that hype, but at 23 years old and the skill set that he brings, maybe at $5.2 million, he could be something that the Knicks could trade that could be wanted by another team. Remember, we're not signing these players to help the Knicks. We're signing these players to be traded later in December. Talen Horton-Tucker has always been one of the more interesting case studies in the NBA. He can get downhill. He can finish. He's got a nice handle. He can create a little bit. He could play above the rim. Kind of reminds me of a little brown shirt, my player type of guy. And I do think that there are some teams out there that would be interested in trading for him if they are trying to rebuild or something along those lines. We've got a couple more players to talk about, but I got to take this time to tell you about our proud sponsor, Game Time. Download the Game Time app and use that promo code ChatSports, and you're going to get $20 off your first purchase where terms do apply. It's the best ticketing app on the market. You get the best seats for the lowest price guaranteed. Prices actually drop as the events get closer, and Game Time, make sure you get the lowest price guaranteed. I've used every single ticketing app out there, and honestly, none of them even come close to Game Time. My favorite feature of Game Time is you could select down on the drop-down menu and go for all-in pricing, and that's what I'm looking for. I don't want to be hit by those hidden fees. You can look at all-in pricing, your last-minute tickets. The app's going to let you know when the flash deals of the seats are going on. You get a view from the seat inside the app, and oh yeah, you get the lowest price guaranteed. It's the only app I use because it's the best, and I deserve the best just like you do. Download the app, create an account, use the promo code ChatSports. That's ChatSports, and get $20 off your first purchase where terms do apply. A guy that I actually do think could actually help the Knicks right now. He's older, so doesn't have nearly the trade value I think of some of these other guys do. But Marcus Morris Sr., once a Knick, always a Knick, actually played pretty decent for Cleveland in one game against the Boston Celtics in the playoffs. I think he had like 26 points or something like that. 34 years old, but one thing the Knicks really do lack right now is a backup power forward. That is going to be Josh Hart, maybe Keita Bates-Diop or Chuma Okeke. Precious Achiuwa is your prototypical backup four, but because where the Knicks are in their roster, they're actually going to use him as their backup five. And I don't mind adding a guy that's a little rough, a little rugged, not scared of anybody, and he'll get somebody's face and tell him to shut up. Marcus Morris was once one of the better face-up players in this league. I don't think he's cooked, but he's not the same guy that he was in 2022 when he averaged 15 points per game. I always thank him as well for helping the Knicks get Emmanuel quickly when he was traded to the Los Angeles Clippers. Still shot 40% from downtown, and if you can add a guy that's 6'8", shoot 40% from downtown, be a veteran, I think that could actually make some sense. I think he's probably the only player in free agency at this point that I really want to sign to help this roster. But the point of today's video is players the Knicks can sign to eventually trade down the line. I think the guy that actually would carry the most trade value is Marquel Fultz, the former number 1 overall pick out of Washington, the 76er that never really lived up to the hype. Well, I think it is fair to call him a bust. I also want to give him credit for being looked at as a bust. Could have easily given up on his NBA career. And he's bounced back, and he's carved out a little role for him. And he's actually, I thought he was decent for the Orlando Magic last year. At 6'3", still just 26 years old. He was pretty solid for Orlando last year. He's a big guard who competes on defense, gets downhill, has a nice little mid-range shot, kind of reminds me of Sean Livingston from back in the day. He just cannot shoot the ball. Like, I don't know what happened, because at Washington, this guy looked like a mini James Harden. He just can't shoot it. I had heard some rumors that he had gotten an ATV accident before his rookie year started in Philadelphia, and that's why his shoulders messed up, and he just lost confidence and things of that nature. But if I'm a team out there that needs a backup point guard down the line, or I'm a team that's looking to trade maybe a veteran that's worth $11.2 million, I can get back Marquel Fultz, and maybe he could be a guy that could be a backup guard for me off the bench. I like the size. I like the athleticism. I like the play style, outside of the fact that he's just throwing up bricks from downtown. Another player that could fit this boat as well is Landry Shamet. the sharpshooter, the 27-year-old, he could just shoot it. And those guys are always going to be valued across the NBA. You shoot north of 38%. There's always going to be a spot for you in this league. Shaman is also another player I think the Knicks could look to sign to eventually trade down the line to that taxpayer mid-level exception of $5.2 million. Name a free agent you want the Knicks to sign, though. I know a lot of people have been calling one for Omer Yeshtervin. We know the Knicks had some interest in Davis Bertans. Give me a name of a free agent you want the Knicks to sign. And make sure you are following me over on social media. I'm on Twitter at @MarshallGreen_. Same handle as well as on IG. Hit me up over there, and let's talk some Knicks.